Hello and welcome back to AC's Make and Repair. Well, today on the channel we're going to be doing some ferrule file handles. Now, the last video I showed you how to make this jig here that clamps a piece of stock nice and parallel with the drill. So when you drill a hole, it's parallel with the axis that we're going to turn. So look, come along with me today. I'll show you how I use this jig. I'll also show you how I fit a ferrule to the handle and the type of file handles that you can make. There's many variations. It's really up to the person's own personal choice. Let's get into it. Alright, some things to consider before we start any of the process of making a handle. Wood choice. I would strongly suggest you use a hardwood. The last thing you need is a softwood that may split in some way, shape or form, and the tang of the file come driving into your palm of your hand. So you don't need something too soft or brittle in any way. So get a hardwood that is going to be able to withstand some force. Okay, so that's for hardwood. I'm using some tulip oak today and some spotted gum, which are good timbers for this particular job. Also, ferrules. You can use all sorts of product for ferrules. You can use stainless steel tubing. Depending on the size handle you want to make your ferrule a little bit smaller than the outside diameter of that handle. It's up to you. You'll have to pick a size that suits your file or whatever you're handling with the ferrule. I've got some copper tubing today. It's about 7/8 or 22 millimeters, or maybe this one's actually about 19 millimeters ID, roughly. Same with this one. This is a brass tube with a chrome plating on it. This was an old handrail of some sort, like a towel rail or something like that, second hand, but it comes up quite effective and neat. Here's another copper tube. It was an old towel rail of some sort. It was copper tubing with chrome plating on it too. So you can use stainless steel tubing. You can use metal tubing. It's really entirely up to you. Maybe all you have on hand is some metal tubing. I wouldn't go too thick of wool because you don't want too much excess weight. Go fairly thin wool, say 1 millimeter thick wool or 1.2 millimeter thick wool, or the copper pipe has ample thickness to it too. Yeah, some of that will tarnish, but if it's a practical thing like a file handle, that's not really an issue, I don't believe. So I'm going to show you how to use this jig now and how we drill the holes and how I roughly work out how to do those holes. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Okay, so marking out, like I said, this is roughly 30 to 35 millimeters square. So you can mark out one of two ways. You could cross the corners if you wanted to. If it's out of parallel, like if it's a rectangular sort of shape, because you're using offcuts for a lot of these things like these little handles. And this is just old second-hand timber that's got no nail holes in it, quite good quality timber. You can use that. Now, you could mark out with a pencil and work out roughly where centre is and go like that. Flip it over. So what we want is exact same orientation at the other end. Flip it over. Then we could turn it sideways, mark the other mark that way, flip it over, mark it that way. Now, I know a lot of guys, when they mark for their drive spur, they'll do a diagonal. Literally, what we're trying to do is find centre. And as long as that point there is the same point as that point there, it doesn't matter. As long as it's roughly balanced. These are small things that are going to throw you your lathe out and wobble or vibrate in a huge way. It's not a problem at all. The other way you can do it is you can use a marking gauge and you can put a mark. The orientation should be the same, so scribe a mark. Flip it over, scribe the mark at this end. Turn it, scribe the mark again, then scribe the mark again. So the centre point at both ends is exactly the same point. So when you put your drive spur centre in there, and your tailstock centre in there after we've drilled it, that will be a dead straight axis right through from centre to centre. So when we turn it, the hole will be parallel without turning. So once you've done that, then we can go on to using the drill jig to drill these holes dead parallel. Just quickly, both fences of the jig run dead parallel with the drill bit. Okay, so how to set it up. Once I've got my centres marked, I go through. I use one of these automatic centre punches, I have for years. I put it on the centre mark and I pop just a small mark. That's all you need, little tiny small mark like that. and I do the same at both ends. Then what I do is I go over it, I cut a drive dog, because mine's a 4-spur drive. I'll just cut with my bandsaw a little mark, in only 1mm deep, just for my spur to grab, my drive spur to fit into. And at this end we'll drill a hole, and I'll show you what we're going to do there in a second. Alright, I've cut my grooves for my drive to go into. There's the dead centre mark there still. So now I'm going to line this up with the centre of this drill bit. Now how did I work out that size of that drill bit? What I did, and it's very common, the taper on the files that I'll be doing today, the handle taper is the same pitch, it's the same degree. You shouldn't be putting files together like that, it's not good for them, but it's the same taper as you can see. This is a smaller file, but the taper is the same. It's not as long, the tang, but it's the same taper. So what I've worked out is if I drill roughly 3 inches deep with a 1/4 inch bit, you'll have to work it out to suit the file you want to do. And then with a 3/8 bit, I drill the top roughly 3/4 inch to 1 inch of the hole. That way, this is about 7/16 to 1/2 inch down here. When it's driven into the hole, it actually suits the taper a bit, and it actually fits quite firm and neatly. That's what I found, okay? You might be different, you might have to work that taper out to suit the files you're doing. So what we'll do is we'll set up. It's fairly easy to set up. Put this in here. Get your point where you can see your point of your drill bit. You'll have to move that roughly to where it is. You've got to get that on the mark. You can't be off on that mark at all. Once you've got that on that mark, which is pretty good there, I think, lock it off. Lock your jig off, or lock your homemade hardwood jig or whatever you've made up to do this job off. Clamp it. Now you can clamp it front to back, or clamp it, probably easier front to back in this case. Now I'm going to lower that down a bit because I want to be able to put my 3/8 drill bit in without moving my jig. So I'll get my 3/8 bit, work it. Yeah, about that height there would be good. So put that in there, clamp it up. I will check to see if it's still lining up. Not too bad, it's a little bit out. I'll loosen that off. Right, that's pretty good there. I'll hold the drill on it, tighten it up. Yeah, that's not too bad, okay? Rightio. Now we'll go on to drilling it. Okay, now I'll just drill that hole there. I'll try to drill that to full depth. I don't know if I'll get it to full depth. I might have to slide it up a bit in a minute and do it again, but it doesn't matter. I'll drill that hole there. I'll clear it as I go. Yeah, it isn't deep enough. So what I'll do is I'll actually slide that up again. Doesn't matter because it's held in the right position. I'll slide it down when it comes through the 3/8. Rightio. Okay, so now I'm going to only drill down about 1 inch. Just roughly. I estimate that by eye. That's about it, there you go. And there you have our blank ready to be turned, okay? Okay, so I'm going to turn a handle, just a very basic handle, something similar to this for the file that I had before. So for this file here, I'm going to turn a basic handle like that for it. Now, I've turned different other styles over the years. Really, it's totally up to you what shape you want to use. I like having a fairly rounded over area here, not too pointy, because when it fits into your palm of your hand, you don't want to push in at one spot. You want it a fairly broad area where it pushes on the palm of your hand. So I'll put this between centres now. I'm going to use a copper ferrule on that, no problem at all. It's only a file handle, it's nothing needed to be flash there, that's for sure. So I'll proceed now to just put this between centres. I've just got to allow enough room here. So I'll go between centres there. Of course, the centre of my tailstock goes straight up the centre of my drill hole. That's why I drill the holes first. You can do them in the lathe using a chuck, etc. But look, I find that a little bit more mucking around. I don't like that, so I like drilling the hole first. Whether I'm right or not's another thing. There'd be plenty of turners out there that say, no, do it while it's in the lathe, put it in a chuck and do it, but I like doing it this way. And where can you go wrong if the centre of this end is the centre of that end, exactly the same position, and you drill it parallel. So I'll rough this out first, and I'll show you how I make roughly one of those. Let's hope it goes to plan. Once I've got it roughly round, I grab a skew and I just make it nice and neat as a parallel cylinder. So we're roughly parallel, a bit of blood vein there, but I'll dodge around that when I turn the handle. Didn't realise a bit of blood vein was in it. A couple of little shakes and a bit of blood vein. Should be able to dodge around those, hopefully. A bit of a shame if I can't, but anyhow, I might turn that down a little bit thinner. There we go. That blood vein could cause a bit of an issue. I'll probably scoop that out with the hand when I do it, just to get rid of it. Alright, let's see if we can get rid of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a diamond point parting tool, and I will part off at this end so I've got room to round the top of my handle. So I part down till about ½ inch, 9/16 thereabouts. Then I get my little spindle gouge and I just slowly work the corner. I get that top corner right first. Alright, so that's roughly what I want. Now I'm going to have a look where them blood veins are. Oh, I'm going to have fun getting rid of them, but anything else I'm going to try. didn't quite get rid of that one. I'm going to leave it the way it is. It's a file handle. I wish it wasn't there. That's not going to be a problem. It's not going to affect the strength of it at all. I'll leave it there. Not really an issue at all. And it's fairly strong, the rest of it, there's no problem there. I'll turn this down now and I'll show you how I fit the ferrule. Alright, so I'll square the end off and then I'll turn it down, just do a bit of a pairing cut and turn it down to roughly the size, and I'll work the diameter out by feel. I try to make my step about exactly the same length. That way when I punch it on, it actually works out fairly tight on there. And I don't have to worry about cutting the excess off. So I'll put a mark there, roughly where it is. Turn that down. Undo my tailstock. Now, if I'm going to remove my handle, on my particular drive here, I've got a little grub screw. I put a mark. So I'll put it back in exactly the same orientation so it doesn't go wobbling, but I'm not going to remove it. What I'm going to do, if I can, is I'll put that on there like that. Do that tailstock up again, just firm. And I'll just turn a slight step on that because that's too big still. Haven't got a lot to do. Just taper that off a little bit. Still too big. Still too big. There we go. We're very firm there now. So I'll just, now what I'll do is I'll get that pretty well square and I'll turn it just like that, and that'll put a little bit of a witness mark what diameter. You can see the shine. You might not be able to see it. I'll see if I zoom in a bit for you. There's a little shiny mark where I've just rubbed that. Okay. So I'll go ahead and I'll turn that down to that there now. Yeah, I'm pretty confident that will be right. I'll just double check with a pair of calipers. That's not too much bigger on this end. Okay, a little bit out. So turn a little bit more. Okay, that'll be a good fit once we drive it on. I won't drive it on just yet. I'll drive it on in a minute. I'm just going to, actually I might drive it on there. I can put that there, just drive it on like that if I want to. Got to be careful I don't break the drive end. There we go, that's on nice and flush. Okay, I've got my pencil mark there from before to show me where it goes back in. Alright, I've got that in. I can finish this now and go through, finish turning it, and go from there. A few of these things out of the road. Now that's good enough. I'm going to put a couple of rings in it. I'll try to dodge that blood vein though, because if I put a ring right beside it, it might split away more. So I'll put a couple of them. One at the end maybe and one in the middle. Sometimes I put one at the end here. I don't mind that either. Okay, I'm going to sand now. I'll put that other ring there, I forgot to do that. And then I'll go through and sand. And that'll come up quite nice. I'm sure of it. Get rid of my tool rest. Now you can put a couple of burn rings if you want to. If you want to do a burn ring, just a friction burn ring, just like this. If you want to, you don't have to. Then I go down and grip my sandpaper. Now that blood vein's still there, not an issue. Bit of a shame, but not an issue. Look, literally, when I do these handles, I use some cheap chest rub, you know, some like chest rub that you put on your chest. I just use some of that. I just rub it on a bit with my finger. I usually don't put that much on. Gone overboard a bit there. And then I get my rag. Where have I put my rag down? And I'll start it up and just sweat that in nice and good. Now this particular rub I've got has some camphor oil, some eucalyptus oil. It's quite good and smells beautiful when you do it too. Clears your nose and so forth. So I've got that in there. That's pretty well done. I can put it in there and cut it off if I want. Look, I tend not to do that. I tend to cut it off with the bandsaw and then trim it with the sharp knife. And that's what I'll do now, and I'll show you the finished product. Bit of a shame about the blood vein, but it's not that deep at all, and it won't be a problem to the handle's integrity at all. Okay, so I've got my file, I put the handle on it, just slipped it on loosely, fits in nice and firm into that quarter as well. Then it's just a matter of, there we go. And look, literally, I've done file handles like that for many years. And look, if you want to do epoxy them in, if you want to burn it in, that's fine. I've never been one for burning them in. Occasionally it'll come loose or whatever, but I find that a comfortable sort of handle. That one's a little bit long for what I usually do, but that won't be a problem. It'll be fine. That's an old file. It's not a bad mill file, so it's quite good. So there you have it. That's how I've done one. I've got some others that I'll show you too that I've done. Okay, so here they have the handles that I've made. This is the one I did just before. And as you can see, a little blood vein there is not a problem. More than a sturdy enough handle. As you can see, the tang goes in nice and tight. There's a little gap on the top and bottom. Not an issue. Not an issue at all. A lot of the bought handles are the same. This is a very plain handle. This is that tulip oak. Look how nice it comes up. That stuff. Beautiful looking. And like I said, just a simple hole in the end. And that's it. A lot of these are offcuts. So the short one here was out of a short bit. So, you know, that's what you might have lying around. Make a file handle out of it rather than throw it in the bin. And or a handle for something else. Here's a round file with a small handle on it. I only drilled the quarter hole in it because the taper on it was slender. And at the most it was 5/16 here, so I went to roughly a quarter. And it did the job perfect. Here's a half round one. And just a nice... See, there's a little bit of a nail hole there from a second-hand piece of timber I used. But it's fine too. It was second-hand because there's a couple of dings in it. A couple of little dents in it from here and there. And marks from other nails, I'd say. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that little video on how I made this file handle today. Now it's very simple. They're a simple beginner's task. They're not hard to make. Take your time doing your round over on your end, that bead on the end there. It's not actually a bead, it's a round over more so. Take your time so you don't have a catch. And bear in mind, don't make it too pointy because when you're using a file a lot, you don't need it digging into the palm of your hand too hard. That's why I've gone a fairly sort of blunt end, but with a nice rounded corner. But they come up effectively. Like I said, you can make them all different shapes. That one there I made a shape because there was a bit of a drill hole there that I had to dudge around, so it was just an offcut. Rather than throw it in the bin, that's a simple file handle. These were all offcuts that I could have thrown in the bin. And the ferrules, like I said, were just made out of second-hand tubing that I picked up here and there. If you want to find some of that tubing, you could probably go to your scrap dealer or a scrap yard. A lot of them have second-hand pieces of brass tubing or copper tubing that you can buy quite reasonably cheap. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, please. Really would appreciate that. Share me with your friends. And look, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. It's been great having you along. Catch you on the next one. Bye for now.